Yo, what's up guys, Alpha, and today I'm going to be doing a full in-depth deck breakdown of a deck that I've recently used to hit rank 2 with on the arena ladder. As you can see from the screenshot here, I'm currently 28-3 with this deck, so it's been performing really well for me. And now before I get into it, there's going to be an MTGAZone link down in the description. If you click on that, it'll have the full deck list there that you can import into arena if you want to try the deck out for yourself. And I'm also in the process of writing a full text article about this deck for MTGAZone Premium that will have more details, a full sideboard guide, how I change the deck for best of one, and some tips and tricks to help you play the deck as well. So as soon as that's finished and up, I'll link that down in the description as well. But anyway, with that all out of the way, this is my red-black Crucias Goblins deck in Historic. And this is a build of Goblins that I really feel like addresses a lot of the long-term problems that Goblins decks have had. And the two main differences with this particular build is that we've got Crucias here as a way to tutor Muxus, which means we don't have to run more than a single copy, which I think is pretty huge. And then additionally, we've actually got some good one-drops in the deck as well, which also fix a lot of the issues with the deck. So, first of all, I'm going to talk about Muxus. So, Muxus is kind of a weird card in Goblins because it's oftentimes the best card in your deck, and also just oftentimes a clunky card that's uncastable if you don't have the ramp to get to it. Now, there are a few cards that are viable that allow you to ramp into it. First of all, we've got Skype Prospector. Now, this is a card that is obviously great at ramping into Muxus, but it's going to be the target of your opponent's removal. As soon as you approach 6 mana, if the opponent has a removal spell, Skype Prospector is going to be the first target. So, this isn't a super reliable way to ramp into Muxus. The second card that allows you to do it is Wily Goblin, which I don't think is a card I'm very high on right now. You know, the big issue with this card is it's just too low impact right now, and it also makes your deck too reliant on Muxus in my opinion, right? Wily Goblin is only good if you have a Muxus, and only good if you're ramping into it. And I think if you're running Wily Goblin, then it makes your deck more reliant on Muxus, which by extension makes your deck very vulnerable to discard spells and counter spells, and also hate pieces like Hushbringer as well, which I don't think is a particularly good place to be. On top of that, I think Goblins as a tribe has so many good tools now that you don't even necessarily need Muxus to win. So I think making your deck reliant on Muxus by running cards like Wily Goblin isn't a great idea. And then the next two cards that allow you to ramp into Muxus are Fable of the Mirror Breaker and Crucias, both of which are incredibly good cards, both of which work really well with Muxus, but the issue with these two cards is they're not Goblins themselves, which means that if you're running a high number of Fable and Crucias, that then makes Muxus worse because you actually have less Goblins in your deck to hit. So I don't think you can afford to run a deck with 4 Muxus, 4 Fable, 4 Crucias, because then Muxus just isn't high impact enough, right? If we look at this particular deck, we have 29 Goblins in the deck, 28 of which are hits from Muxus because obviously it doesn't count itself. So if you start running 4 Muxus, even if you're only running 4 Crucias, 2 Fable, I don't think the Muxus has enough hits to be consistently good, particularly post-sideboard if you're bringing in more non-creature spells. And particularly, you know, if you're running 4 Prospector, 4 Fable, 4 Crucias, Muxus it just isn't good enough in terms of hits. Whereas I think Crucias and a single copy of Muxus really goes a long way to fix that issue, because in this particular deck we have Prospector, Crucias and Fable as ways to ramp into it, but we're only really going to find the Muxus when we have the Crucias, which means we already have the ramp to cast it, right? The big issue with Muxus is that it can sit in your hand uncastable if you don't have ways to ramp into it. And the nice thing about this deck is, you know, like I said, the main way we're finding it is playing Crucias, discarding a 3-drop and naming Ambitious, and then we immediately get a treasure token which starts ramping into it anyway. So the only times we're ever really going to find Muxus is already castable because we're tutoring it off the Crucias, if that makes sense. And because Crucias can tutor it, we only have to run a single copy. And like I said, I don't think the deck needs to be super reliant on it, but having this gives us access to it without having to go overboard on Muxus itself, if that makes sense. Outside of that, I think Crucias is just a great card in the deck anyway. I think it's one of the most generically powerful cards in the entire format, right? We can discard lands if we're flooding out to find good stuff. The treasure tokens are always valuable because we have tons of mana sinks in the deck, stuff like Battlecry Goblins, stuff like, you know, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, Reflection of Kiki Jiki, obviously Muxus itself, being able to cast multiple spells and a turn off the treasures is really sick as well. And just, yeah, in general, being able to find Muxus when we need it and being able to ramp into it straight away is very, very huge. Now, the second big addition to the deck are Cacophony Scamp and Exuberant Fusing. So having actual good one-drops in this deck is so huge because Goblins has never really been an aggro deck in the past. You know, the two most popular variants in the past were the old school mono red builds with Krenko, which I think was that deck felt much more like a combo deck than an aggro deck. And then more recently, we've had the Rakdos builds with Slingang Lieutenant, which again feel more like a mid-range deck than an aggro deck. And the reason why Goblins hasn't really felt like a good aggro deck is just because outside of Skirk Prospector, you didn't really have good 1-drops in the past. And now with the addition of Cacophony Scamp and Exuberant Fusing from the latest set, we actually have some really good 1-drops that make the deck feel like an aggro deck. You know, this deck can play like an aggro deck because we have a ton of 1-drops so we can curve out. It also grinds very well into the mid-game because of Fable of the Mirrorbreaker and Crucias, and we still have access to Muxus, so the deck has combo burst as well. So we're kind of an aggro deck that can grind, that also has combo burst at the top of the curve as well, which I think is really, really resilient. You know, it's very difficult to shut this deck out because it's attacking on so many angles. So Cacophony Scamp, one of the new 1-drops. This is great for a number of reasons. First of all, it gives you additional early interaction, which is really huge. I think one of the biggest weaknesses of Goblins in the past was that you struggle against very fast aggro decks because you need to be running a high number of Goblins for all your synergies, but then you don't have that much interaction outside of Munitions Expert. And Cacophony Scamp, particularly on the play on turn 1, is very, very nice because you can play it, attack, and then sacrifice it to kill your opponent's Llanowar Elves or Dragon's Rage Channeler or whatever 1-drop they play, which is really sick. Additionally, we can boost its power very easily with stuff like Runvan Hallmaster, Battlecry Goblin, or Goblin Chieftain, which then enables us to kill bigger creatures. You know, you can play this on turn 1, then a Hallmaster on turn 2, and then attack and kill a 2-toughness creature, which is really nice. Additionally, it's really good in combat as well. You know, I've used this to pick off creatures like Shieldred, for example. You know, if the opponent's forced to block when you're making a big attack, you can then sacrifice this Scamp in order to kill a bigger creature. So it gives you a way to kill bigger creatures without needing Munitions Expert, which is really nice. Additionally, the Proliferate is also really nice with cards like Exuberant Fusing and Fable of the Mirrorbreaker. The nut draw with this deck that you're going to see later in the gameplay is Scamp on turn 1, and then you can play double Fusing on turn 2, attack with the Scamp, sacrifice it to kill your opponent's 1-drop, and then not only do you Proliferate to put an extra oil counter on the Fusings, but the Fusings also both trigger because the Scamp dies, which then leaves you with 2 1-mana 3/1 tramples on turn 2, which is really sick. And then lastly, it also gives you really good reach in the late game as well, because if you're attacking with a bunch of creatures, if you're a few damage short of lethal, you can then just sacrifice the Scamps to deal the last few points of damage to the opponent, which means that they're also good hits off Muxus, right? We have Chieftain and Battlecry Goblin to give our whole board haste off Muxus, and then, like I said, if we attack and we're a few points short of lethal, we can just sacrifice Scamps to deal the last few points, so it gives us good reach in the late game as well. So for a 1-drop, it does so much in the deck. Next we've got Exuberant Fusing, so this is another card from the latest set. So it's a 0/1 with Trample, and then it grows every time an artifact or a creature dies, basically, which is really sick in this particular deck. First of all, because we have Treasures of Crucias or Fable, which trigger it. We also have Skirk Prospector, which triggers it. And, you know, we have a lot of must-kill threats in the deck, right? We've got Hallmaster, we've got Chieftain, we've got Crucias, and, you know, the Fable token and Reflection are also cards that are going to be targeted for removal, which means that if we play Fusing on turn 1, the opponent's... Oh, also Battlecry Goblin is very much a must-kill threat as well. So even outside of sacrificing stuff to Prospector or sacrificing the treasures, the opponent killing our other creatures will also trigger this to make it really huge. And again, it enables us to just attack and force through a bunch of damage, because as you're making blocks, you can sacrifice the blocks creatures to the Prospector, often pumping that mana into Battlecry Goblin, whilst also growing your Fusing to trample through for extra damage. So Fusing, really, really great synergies in the deck. Another very aggressively slanted card. So, you know, starts with Cacophony Scamp and Fusing, can apply a ton of pressure to the opponent. So Fusing, another really, really great addition to the deck. So next up we've got Skirk Prospector. Already talked about this a little bit, but it has a ton of synergy in the deck. So first of all, it's great with Scamp. You know, if we've just cast the Scamp, we can sacrifice it to the Prospector to deal direct damage or to kill a creature, which is really nice. We can, you know, it's really nice with the Fusing because it triggers it to put more +1/+0 counters on it. Really, really sick with the Battlecry Goblin at allowing us to pump our board even further. You know, we can attack, wait for an opponent to block, then sacrifice the blocks creatures to put more mana into the Battlecry Goblin to boost the unblocks creatures to force through a bunch of extra damage. Really good with the Hallmaster, allowing us to produce mana and also exile cards off the top of our library to try and find more goblins to cast. Really nice with Fable and Crucias because it allows us to cast these on turn 2, which is really huge. You know, we can go Prospector on 1 into Crucias or Fable on turn 2, which puts us so far ahead if the opponent doesn't have an immediate removal spell for them. And is also really good with Muxus, obviously, because it allows us to ramp into the Muxus as well. So Prospector, really, really sick card in this build, obviously. Then Battlecry Goblin, one of the best cards in the whole deck. Honestly, like, this has won me so many games just on its own. Being able to give your creatures +1/+0 is really huge, but being able to activate it multiple times, producing tokens when it attacks is really, really sick. The amount of damage that you can force through just off this card is so, so big. Additionally, it's a really nice hit off Muxus. You know, we do want to be able to kill the turn we play Muxus. We do have Chieftain, But if we hit Battlecry Goblin and we have 2 mana spare off treasures, or we have Battlecry Goblin and Skirk Prospector, we can just pump the Battlecry Goblin to give our whole board haste that way as well. So Battlecry Goblin, definitely one of the highest power cards in the whole deck. Then we've got Revolt Hordemaster, another really sick card in the deck, provides you a Lord effect, and then also provides you some protection from removal as well, which is really nice. Allows you to refuel against cards like Brotherhood's End. And even if the opponent is using like an Exile-based sweeper like Divine Purge, if we have it alongside Skirk Prospector, we can sack stuff to, generate a card advantage off the Hordemaster as well. So Hordemaster, really sick card. Also works really nicely with cards like Cacophony Scamp and Exuberant Fusing to enable these fast aggressive starts. Then we've got Munitions Expert, which acts as removal. Munitions Expert is much better in this build than previous builds because we have such a high density of 1-drops. So the chances of us having a 1-drop into Munitions Expert on turn 2 to kill a 2 toughness creature is a lot higher. And then obviously it's really, really good later in the game once we have more goblins in play as well. So Munitions Expert, really great as additional removal, in addition to Cacophony Scamp, which gives us much more game against other aggressive decks, which were previously Goblins' toughest matchup. Then we've got 2 copies of Fable of the Mirror Breaker. So this is such a great card in the deck. Chapter 1 creating a 2/2 goblin, so it synergizes with all of our other goblin synergies. The treasure token that it creates is great at ramping into Muxus. Like I said, we already have a ton of mana sinks in the deck, stuff like Battlecry Goblin. Being able to cast multiple spells in a turn is great. The treasure token also triggers the Fusing as well, so loads of synergy with Chapter 1. And the looting on Chapter 2 is really, really great as well, just ensuring that we don't run out of gas. The reason that we're able to grind into the mid to late game is off the back of cards like Fable and Crucias, just ensuring that we don't draw dead. So Chapter 2, looting away to make sure that we find what we need is really great. And then Reflection of Kiki Jiki, obviously such a strong late game engine, pairs really nicely with a number of the cards in the deck. We can copy the Cacophony Scamp to get the sack during the end step to kill something. We can copy Battlecry Goblin if we're planning a big attack to then produce extra tokens off the attack trigger. We can copy Hordemaster, which is really great because it boosts our board again, and then when it dies during the end step we get 2 triggers off the Hordemaster. Copying Munitions Expert is really sick because then we get an additional removal spell for free essentially, and it pairs really, really nicely with Goblin Chieftain and Battlecry Goblin as well, because we can give the Reflection haste to be able to activate at the turn it flips, which is really, really sick as well. So Fable, really nice. The reason that I'm not running more than 2 copies is, I kind of alluded to it earlier, we can't really afford to run too many non-goblins in the deck, or Muxus becomes a bit worse. But I think a split of 2 and 4 with Crucias has felt really, really nice. Then Goblin Chieftain, this card is really important because we're still a Muxus deck. We still want to be able to, play Muxus, hit a Haste Lord and then attack. But I also think with this particular build, the Anthem effects, like with Hordemaster and Goblin Chieftain, are really relevant because of the 1-drops we're running, right? Cacophony Scamp and Fusing are both cards that really care about their power, so being able to boost them off Chieftain and Hordemaster is really nice. Obviously, being able to play this and then play other creatures to give them haste is really sick as well. Pairs very nicely with the Battlecry Goblin because it's very easy to trigger the pack tactics and apply a lot of pressure very quickly. Very nice with Fable, as I explained. Not only does it give Reflection haste, but it gives the 2/2 haste if you play Chieftain before the Fable as well. So Chieftain, really, really nice in this deck because we care about haste and we really want a high density of board pumps as well because of stuff like Scamp and Fusing. Then Crucias, already talked about this a little bit, gives us consistent access to the Muxus without needing to run a ton of copies of it, and just consistently fixes our hand, produces treasure tokens, which is great as well. So, Crucias, I'm sure if you played Historic, you've played against this card and you know how good it is. And then mana base wise, I still think it's important to run 25 lands, even though the curve is a bit lower, because we have so many cards that are important to cast on turn 3, and we have a ton of ways to loot away the lands, like off Fable and Crucias, if we do flood out. Plus, we have a lot of utility lands. So if we look at the lands themselves, we've got all of the good Black-Red Jewel lands. I think Blackleaf Cliffs is a great addition to this deck, specifically because we're running Fatal Push. If we weren't running Fatal Push in this sideboard and we didn't need black mana on turn 1, then I don't think you would need to run 4 copies of this. But because we're running the 4 Fatal Push here, I do think it's quite important. Then we've got 4 Den of the Bugbear, which is a really, obviously, a very, very good creature land, but synergizes really well with this deck because both the land itself and the token it creates is a goblin, which, obviously synergizes with the Chieftain, the Hordemaster, and the Battlecry Goblin. So Den is really great. Then we've got Sokenzan, which is free to run as a one-of, and even though the deck is predominantly red, I wanted to run Takenuma as, if you're going up to 25 lands, I did want to run a pretty high density of utility lands just to, mitigate against flood. And Takenuma is really nice because we just have a lot of high impact hits off it, right? Crucias is great to get, Chieftain is great to get, Battlecry Goblin is great to get off it. Even stuff like Munitions Expert and Hordemaster are nice hits as well. So Takenuma, as a single black land in the deck, it's fine. We don't have stuff like Conspicuous Snoop sweep in the main deck that needs double red on turn 2, so running a single Takenuma has been fine. So that's the deck overall, or that's the main deck anyway, and I think that this particular build really goes a long way to fix a lot of the issues that Goblins decks have had in the past. I think Muxus is still an important a card to have access to, but I felt like builds that were running 4 just had clunky draws where you have Muxus and no way to ramp into it, and having Muxus as a card that you're only really finding off Crucias, so you already have ramp straight away to cast it, is really sick. And more importantly than that, having good quality 1-drops means that the deck can play like an actual aggro deck now. And like I said, I think the deck can play like an aggro deck because of Fable and Crucias and, you know, Horde Master to a lesser extent. You can play a very good grindy game into the long games. I think this is still a nightmare matchup for Rakdos Midrange, which is a really good place to be. You know, I think this particular build is very strong against Rakdos Midrange, which is one of the most popular decks right now. And you still have access to Muxus as like a 1-card combo as well. So this deck is attacking from a lot of different angles. So now onto the sideboard, we've got 4 copies of Fatal Push here, which is really important against the aggressive decks. You know, like I said, decks like Wizards and Auras, like the very fast aggressive decks, have always been the tougher matchups for Goblins, and having Fatal Push in addition to Munitions Expert and Cacophony Scamp just gives you a high density of early interaction, which is really nice. Then we've also got 2 copies of Feed the Swarm here as additional interaction. So obviously Feed the Swarm isn't the best interaction, but the reason I've gone for this over other options is because of Knight of Souls Betrayal. So Knight of Souls Betrayal is a card that Rakdos Midrange, well, I mean, if people are running my version of the deck, they will be running Knight of Souls Betrayal in the sideboard, which they can tutor off Crucias, and this particular build of the deck is potentially even more vulnerable to Knight of Souls Betrayal than the previous versions. Actually, I'm not sure that's true because the Rakdos versions are running Slingang Lieutenant, which means that your 4-drop gets hosed by it rather than your 1-drops, but Cacophony Scamp and Fusing, the new additions to the deck, both have 1 toughness and get immediately killed by Knight of Souls Betrayal. So I feel like having Feed the Swarm as an answer to Knight of Souls Betrayal is quite important because that card can hose you, and then it also does have other applications. You know, against a deck like Wizards or Auras, I will bring it in addition to Fatal Push just as early interaction, and it's also nice that it gives you an out to random stuff like Serra's Emissary as well if the opponent's playing like really big creatures that they don't expect you to have removal for. Feed the Swarm acts as a catch-all answer there as well, which is really nice. Not to mention if the opponent's playing an Enchantress deck or whatever, this gives us outs to 9 Life Solemnity as well. So Feed the Swarm mainly here as an answer to Knight of Souls Betrayal, but does have applications in other matchups as well. Then we've got 3 copies of Goblin Trashmaster. So this is obviously here for all of the artifact decks, whether that's the Thought Monitor Affinity decks, the Luris Affinity decks, the Red-White Thopters decks, stuff like that. Trashmaster is just the best card in that matchup. Now, it does interfere with Crucias finding Muxus, but in the matchups where we're bringing it in, Trashmaster is potentially more high impact than Muxus anyway, so being able to tutor it off the Crucias is actually really nice there as well. So yeah, Trashmaster really important against the artifact decks. And we've got 2 Conspicuous Snoop and 2 Chandra here for the control deck. So Snoop in the sideboard might look weird, but my opinion on Snoop right now is that Historic in general is kind of in 2 camps, right? Your deck is either running a very fast aggressive deck, in which case Snoop is too slow, right? Against a deck like Wizards or Auras, for example, Snoop is just too slow, right? Unless you happen to hit perfect off the top, it's just going to be a 2-mana 2/2 that gives you a bit of card advantage, which isn't really good enough. And then the other decks that tend to want to play a longer game are just full of removal. You know, stuff like Rakdos Midrange and Blue-White Control has so much removal in that Snoop is very unlikely to live. So the only reason I've got Snoop in this sideboard right now is because specifically against Control, I want to be boarding out of 4 Munitions Expert because it's pretty low impact there. And I want to be bringing in Chandra as well, but I don't want to make the curve of the deck too high. So when I cut 4 2-drops, I wanted to bring in 2 Chandra, and then I just replaced the last 2 copies of Munitions Expert with 2 Snoop at the 2-drop slot, which I think is better against Blue-White Control than Rakdos Midrange because they have slightly less single target removal because they're running sweepers as well. So there is a chance that you can play Snoop on turn 2 and start generating value off it, which is nice. So specifically against Control, Snoop is here to replace the last 2 copies of Munitions Expert, if that makes sense. In terms of Chandra, I still think Chandra is a really good card against Control, specifically because, you know, all of their sweepers are going to be able to deal with stuff like Squee or, you know, any goblin creature like Ringleader, for example, that is meant to be grinding into a longer game, still dies to Divine Purge, Supreme Verdict, and Farewell, whereas Chandra dodges all of those and is just much more difficult for them to deal with cleanly. Additionally, we can cast it off on turn 2 off the Skirk Prospector, which is really hard for them to deal with, and it hits every single card that we're going to have in the main deck as well off the second +1. So Chandra, just the best card against Control. So like I said, against Control, we just board out the 4 Munitions Expert, board into 2 Snoop and 2 Chandra. And then finally, we've got 2 copies of Unlicensed Hearse's Graveyard Hate, so this is going to be good against decks like Is It Phoenix? Kethis combo, which I think is a very underplayed deck right now, specifically since the new Jace came out. I think that deck's got a lot better. So, and I've also seen, you know, some Reanimator floating around as well, so Hearse very important there. The reason why I'm running Hearse over stuff like Tormod's Crypt or Soulguide Lantern is because this deck does often grind into longer games against the decks like Is It Phoenix that play stuff that interacts with the graveyard, and Hearse acting as a threat that we can crew up later in the game is actually quite relevant there. So I prefer Hearse to Soulguide Lantern or Tormod's Crypt, specifically in those matchups. And also it's just better because it gives you repeatable Graveyard Hate, right? If you're playing an all-out aggro deck, for example, then I think I prefer Tormod's Crypt or Soulguide Lantern. But in this deck, where we are often playing like a grindy deck as well, I think I do prefer Hearse here. So that's a deck. Like I said, I really, really like this particular build of the deck. I think it addresses a lot of the issues that Goblins have had for a long time. Having more playable 1-drops is absolutely huge. Not relying on 4 Muxus anymore is really, really huge as well. So that's the deck. If you've got any questions about it at all, definitely let me know in the comments below. And next time I've got some gameplay with this deck. Since a lot of the games that I recorded were quite quick, I'm actually going to include slightly more gameplay than usual. So definitely let me know if you've got any questions about the deck at all, and I hope you enjoy the gameplay. Big up. Oh, interesting. Okay, we're against Dogger. So if you don't know Dogger Cubebones, he's the content manager at MTGAZone. Great player, and also written a ton of sick articles, so definitely check his stuff out if you haven't. Interesting to see what he's playing here. Okay, so obviously can't keep this. So we'll Merle, and yeah, this is definitely keepable here. Trying to think whether we want to put a Fusing or a Fable back. I think in the dark I'll put back a Fusing, because this is potentially a turn 2 Fable here. And there are a lot of matchups where double Fable is going to be really sick. Okay, so Overground Farmland, so it could be humans maybe. Okay, Innkeeper, so probably Helioak if I had to guess, but there are a couple of other decks that could potentially run Innkeeper. So I was going to go for Fable on 2 here, but I suspect they're on Helioak, and keeping them off their life gain enablers if they are playing Helioak is really important, right? Because if you can kill all their life gain enablers or just keep them all off the board, then Voice of the Blessed and Tradasara essentially do nothing, and it stops them comboing off as well. The only thing they can really do without life gain enablers is Heliod manually giving lifelink to a Voice of the Blessed or something. So very important to take out the life gain enablers if we possibly can. So we'll see what else they have here. Okay, they pass, so this is almost definitely going to be Collected Company then. So, going to run out the Fable here and just pass. Definitely not going to attack into the Company, and hopefully they don't get too much of a good hit here. Okay, yep, there's the Company. See what they hit. Okay, 2 life gain enablers is pretty scary. So, that's if they have a Voice of the Blessed or Tradasara in hand, that's going to be really good. If they have Heliod and Scurryoak, that's obviously going to be very good as well. So, just got to keep our fingers crossed they don't have anything too insane here. I mean, we can make good use of Chapter 2 of Fable here to try and dig for some more interaction, or, try and dig for like a Muxus or something to go way over the top, or, another Munitions Expert. Cacophony Scamp's also pretty reasonable here. Oh, speaking of, because of Prospector. So, I kind of want to keep Chieftain because it's really good with Fable, right? We can play the Chieftain, make Reflection immediately, be able to tap, and then we can start copying Munitions Expert to kill stuff. And I definitely want the land, so I think I'm going to put back a Fable here and keep all the others. Oh, wow, we drew Muxus. Okay, sick. So that changes things. Definitely just going to go for the Muxus here, and definitely going to sack the Munitions Expert. I think, we definitely want to keep the Prospector between that and the 2-2, so see what we hit here. Hopefully we get a good Muxus here. And then we can also potentially play the Cacophony Scamp afterwards in order to kill one of the life gain enablers. Okay, sick. We hit Munitions Expert, so definitely going to take out one of their life gain enablers here. Okay, sure. They Company in response. So just got to hope they don't hit anything too good here. Obviously, I really hope they don't hit the combo. Oh, they do. Okay. So that kind of sucks. I don't think there's much we could have done here, to be honest. If we had Cacophony Scamp on the battlefield, we could have killed one of their life gain enablers, but that still wouldn't have been enough. So that was a little bit unfortunate. I don't think we could have done much that game. So we definitely want more Fatal Pushes here. Like I said, keeping them off life gain enablers is very important. And then we can afford to trim Fables here. I think that's, not going to be the best. Fables are generally getting grindier matchups. Oh, wait, whoops. Okay, I'm an idiot. I just realized I submitted a 62 card deck. So I meant to cut 2 Exuberant Fuselings as well. We definitely want to keep the Cacophony Scamps because that's just easy ways to kill their life gain enablers. Same thing with the Munitions Expert, and then everything else is pretty important. So yeah, that was my bad. I should have cut the Exuberant Fuselings. Well, I mean, having said that, we're getting pretty paid off for it here, right? This is a very sick start if they have a 1-drop here, because we can go Scamp on 1. Okay, they do. They have a Veteran. Okay, perfect. So now we can go double Fuseling here. And if they don't block our attack here, we get to kill their Veteran and turn both of these Fuselings into 3/1s because of the Proliferate. If they do block... okay, I think they probably should have blocked there because, you know, we're almost certainly going to be using the Scamp here to kill the Veteran, and at least them blocking prevents us getting the Proliferate, but... I mean, either way, we're really happy now. We're off to a very fast start here. Okay, so they run out of Voice of the Blessed. So we could play Hordemaster beforehand, but I think I just want to go for the Crucias here. So we'll attack with both. I don't mind trading for a Voice of the Blessed at all. The other Fuseling grows up to a 4/1, and now we can play Crucias. And we'll pitch the Hordemaster here and go for Greater, see what we hit. Okay, we hit another Crucias, not the best, but now we can turn that into a Muxus next turn, which is obviously really good. We obviously have the Hordemaster to pump the Fuseling as well. Okay, they run out Luminous Phantom and miss land drops. Okay, wow. That kind of sucks for them, obviously. So we'll run out the Hordemaster. And going to attack first here. I don't think it makes really much of a difference, to be honest. And then we can run out the Prospector. And then we can turn this Crucius into a Muxus. And we have... I mean, I guess if they kill the Prospector, we don't have mana to cast it, but... yeah, them missing land drops is really punishing. So, I mean, yeah, that was kind of like a free roll win there, I think. I completely forgot again. I was too distracted. I completely forgot. So I should have cut 2 Fuselings there. That was my bad. I mean, in these aggro matchups, or these matchups where you want a lot of removal, I think Cacophony Scamp is important to keep, but because you're bringing in 4 Fatal Push at the 1-drop slot, you can also cut the Fuselings in these matchups. You know, the Trample isn't as relevant against the creature decks. Well, I mean, Trample is obviously relevant against the creature decks, but I mean, specifically against decks where you want a lot of interaction, like Wizards, or Auras, or Helioak here, for example. I think something like Fatal Push, and just the other cards in the deck are more important. So yeah, that was my bad. I obviously should have gone down to 60 again and cut the Fuselings. Hopefully we don't get too punished. Okay, sweet. I mean, this is fine. The only way you really get punished is if you get stuck on lands because you're running more than 60. Okay, interesting. So we could go for push or Scamp on turn 1 here. Not the easiest choice because Scamp is good to get down as early as possible. We could use the Scamp to kill the Lunark Veteran, but I think I'm just going to go pass with Fatal Push open here and see what they cast instead. Okay, they go for an Innkeeper, so see what else they run. I mean, in that case, I'm just going to push the Innkeeper. So, I mean, we probably could have just gone for the Cacophony Scamp, but I was worried there that they would cast a Voice of the Blessed or Trelisara that would go straight up to a 3/3. And then we would have had the push in hand to deal with it. I mean, yeah, maybe it's better to run out Scamp on turn 1 there. That might have been a mistake on my part. Because Scamp can guarantee kill their life gain enabler. But then on turn 2, we would have had to pick between killing their life gain enabler and killing their payoff card. Definitely go for Crucias here, and probably going to pitch the Fuseling here. You know, this is kind of an example. Or I don't know, maybe Scamp isn't good enough at this point. I don't know, yeah. I think this is kind of a good example of a situation where Fuseling isn't that great, right? Every other, you know, Scamp is good because it can kill the life gain enablers. Prospect is generally good. Battlecry Goblin is really sick. So the reason why I went for Expedient rather than Ambitious there is because hitting a land drop is very important with the Battlecry Goblin here. Because now we have an extra land, we can go Cacophony Scamp and Battlecry Goblin and then pump our whole board. And even if they don't block here, we can just kill the Trelisara off the Cacophony Scamp here. So getting that extra land just opens up a new line here, obviously. So when you've got Battlecry Goblin, it's often worth trying to find lands off the Crucias if it means you get an extra activation like this. So now definitely going to kill the Trelisara just to shut off the possibility of them using Heliod's ability on it to gain them some life back. Now we found another Crucias so that we can just turn that into a Muxus next turn. We've also got Battlecry Goblin. Yeah, okay, sweet, we got there, nice. Okay, so we're going second here. And yeah, this looks good, right? We've got Prospector on 1, into Munitions Expert on 2, or potentially even Fable, right? We can use Prospector to ramp into Fable on turn 2, which is really sick against a lot of decks. Okay, Blood Crypt tapped, so if we are against Rakdos midrange, I'm definitely going to slam the Fable on turn 2 here. Okay, we're in a mirror match against another Goblins deck, interesting. So the Munitions Expert here, I mean, we'll sack the Prospector in response, doesn't really make a difference. And thankfully we can just flash in our own Munitions Expert to kill theirs here. But I think I'm going to pass just in case, you know, if they play a Horde Master or something, I'd rather wait for them to play that first and then potentially kill that. But yeah, we'll see what they do here. Okay, Wily Goblins, sure. But they missed their their third land drop, which is huge. You know, this is the reason why I want to run 25 lands, because missing a third land drop playing Goblins is brutal. Okay, so, I mean, I'm going to attack first here just to see if they take the trade. I'd be pretty happy to, even though we've got Munitions Expert, which does want a high density of Goblins in play. I think I'm happy just taking the trade here, just to clear it off the board, because there are a lot of cards that could make use of that later, right? If they play a Prospector, that could help them ramp into Muxus, particularly because they've got the treasure token. Okay, so I think we'll pitch a Cacophony Scamp and a land here, try and find something a bit more high impact. Okay, perfect, that's really good. So I'm going to play this on red here. We could have potentially played that on black to be able to do Crucias and Munitions Expert in the same turn. Maybe that was slightly better, I don't know. Either way, I'm going to lead on the Horde Master here. And then attack, produce a treasure token. Okay, opponent goes for Munitions Expert here, so they're going to get blown out pretty hard now. Because they try and kill the Horde Master, we can just flash in our Munitions Expert in response, kill theirs, and that will fizzle their trigger. So now we get to keep the Horde Master around, so that was kind of a blowout. I mean, if they hadn't done that, I think I would have just gone for Crucias instead. Main phase 2. Okay, now we get to give... I mean, obviously sucks for the opponent that they missed land drops, but now we get to give Reflection haste, which means we can activate it straight away. So we can... I mean, I don't even know if it's worth copying. Yeah, okay, opponent just scoops up. So that was kind of a rough game for the opponent there, obviously. But that does highlight, you know, that kind of exemplifies why I think it's important to run 25 lands in Goblins, just because if you miss your third land drop, you do often just lose on the spot. So I think we just want to trim a couple of Fable for Fatal pushes here. I don't want to go too hard on removal because oftentimes whoever has the best proactive game plan tends to win this matchup, but I do feel like Fatal Push, particularly on the draw, is going to be useful against stuff like opposing Runveld Horde Masters or stuff like Conspicuous Snoop if they play that as well. So this is obviously kind of a risky keep because we are very land heavy, but I very much doubt the opponent, if they're playing Goblins, well, we know they are, but they're going to have a hard time dealing with Crucias immediately. And it is just going to help to smooth our hand out. You know, even though we have got a handful of lands, we can just get Crucias down on 3 and start digging for other stuff. So the Munitions Expert, the Scamp here, we can just kill their Expert in response. Okay, perfect. We draw a 2-drop, so now we can curve out and start digging for more stuff off the Crucias. So even though we kept a land-heavy hand, Crucias should hopefully help us fix that. Okay, nothing from the opponent, so that makes me think they've probably got another Munitions Expert here, if that's a guess. Definitely going to attack him with the Battlecry Goblins, see what they've got. They could have a Fatal Push as well, potentially. You know, they have got access to a black mana. Either way, I don't think they should have a good way to kill Crucias unless they brought in a Braid against us. Okay, there is Munitions Expert. Do they have another Flash Goblin? No, okay, they just flash it in to get it on the battlefield. So we'll activate the Crucias here and just pitch one of these lands into something better. So Fusing's not the best, but it's also not awful with the Battlecry Goblin here. Particularly because we're going to be generating treasures off the Crucias every turn, which can buff the Fuseling. So I think we probably want to start getting aggressive here. The opponent does have Stinging Lieutenant and they are approaching Muxus mana, so I do think we want to start applying pressure here. So I'm going to activate the Battlecry Goblin here, but I don't think I'm going to attack with the Fuseling because I think, you know, the Fusing is going to grow over time. We don't want them to just block with one of their 1/1 tokens, so I think I'll attack with everything other than the Fuseling. And then if they do block like the Prospector here or the Battlecry Goblin or even the Crucias, we're going to be getting extra buffs for the Fuseling. Okay, they do block the Prospector. I assume they don't sack in response. Yeah, okay. So that's not bad. We get to get them down to 11, and we get a Fusing trigger, and then obviously we're going to get a Crucias trigger at the end of our turn. And the fact that Battlecry Goblin survived here means that unless they have a way to kill it next turn, we're going to be applying a ton of pressure, even though they have Sling-Gang Lieutenant to gain some life back. And the nice thing here is, unless they have Prospector, they don't have a way to go for Muxus yet either, which is pretty huge. Right, if they had Muxus next turn, we could potentially be in trouble, but I think we should be able to apply a lot of pressure next turn, just off the back of this Battlecry Goblin. Because we're guaranteed another 1-1, and we can pump it 3 times because of the Crucias treasures that we're going to get. So, opponent in the tank here, I mean, maybe they're just disconnected, I'm not sure. But yeah, either way, I feel we're in a pretty good spot here. If the opponent was going into their 6 mana next turn, I'd be worried about Muxus, but as things stand, I'm not really too concerned. You know, another Sling-Gang could be annoying at just clogging up the ground, but this is one of the main reasons why I wanted to keep the fusing round for at least another turn. Okay, Chieftain's a pretty sick draw here. But yeah, fusing, being able to force through trample damage is pretty important. Oh, they have Phyrexian Tower, so they could actually have Muxus here. Yikes, okay, I wasn't expecting that. So I've just got to hope they don't have an insane hit here. If they don't have an insane hit here, I think we still have a chance. Okay, that's not too bad. That's manageable. So we'll see what they attack with here. So ideally, I would love to keep the fusing around. I've just got to calculate here. So what would that would be? So that would be 11 and then 12. And then they've got 6 in place. So that's only 18 damage, right? If they sack everything to the Sling-Gang Lieutenant. So I think we can just let this through. Let me just double check here. Yeah, so we would only take 18 if they sacked everything here, which means I think we're safe to leave the Fuseling back, and then that should hopefully enable us to go for lethal on the crackback here. I mean, even without Chieftain, I think we're pretty close to lethal anyway, but I'm pretty sure Chieftain should get us there next turn. So not taking damage in the early game was really paid off here, right? If we were at much lower life, we'd have to block with the Fuseling, which would be really annoying. Okay, Munitions Expert's also a nice draw here. So I think that makes things easier, right? Because they could just chump block and then sack stuff to the Sling-Gang Lieutenant, but now we've got the Munitions Expert. You know, we can't shock in the Blood Crypt here with Sling-Gang Lieutenant in play because we go down to 6, they sack their whole board and kill us. But doing Munitions Expert first here now enables us to shock in the Blood Crypt, play Chieftain, and activate the Battlecry Goblin, which should be more than enough for lethal. Had we not drawn the Munitions Expert, I think we probably would have been close to lethal. I'd have to calculate it, but this should be a lot easier now, right? We flash this in, kill the Sling-Gang Lieutenant, and the opponent can't sack their whole board in response, or they're just dead on board. So they probably only sack the Sling-Gang Lieutenant. Maybe they'll sack like the 1/1 in addition to buff their life total a little bit, but this should definitely lock things up. Right, we just kill the Sling-Gang Lieutenant here. They probably sack it in response, shock in the Blood Crypt, Chieftain, and then we just attack with everything, and then just activate the Battlecry Goblin once, and then not only do we get the buff from the Battlecry Goblin, but the sacking the 2 treasures also buffs the Fuseling by 2 power as well. So this should be way more than lethal now. Okay, so they block the Chieftain and the Crucias. Okay, they go for the Battlecry Goblin instead. I mean, either way, it shouldn't really matter. We should have way more than enough for lethal here. So activate the Battlecry Goblin, get 2 oil counters on the fusing, puts it up to a 6/2. And now, yeah, we're 6 damage over, so even through Muxus managed to win that one, which is pretty sick. Battlecry Goblin putting in work. Okay, so we're going second here. And yeah, I think this is fine, right? We are a little bit land heavy, but we've got a lot of good draws that could smooth this out. And at worst case, we can always just, you know, channel the Sockenzan as well. But yeah, Prospector on 1 into Munitions Expert on 2 should be pretty good. Okay, Thoughtseize from the opponent, so probably against Rakdos Midrange here, I imagine. Although they are running Gigantha, which means they're not running Seasoned Pyromancer, which is interesting. Okay, they take the Skirk Prospector, which might mean they've got more discard spells here, potentially. But yeah, interesting they're not running Seasoned Pyromancer. Maybe they're playing Jund rather than Rakdos, maybe? Because yeah, Seasoned Pyromancer definitely feels like one of the best cards in the mid-range archetype in general. Okay, there's a second Thoughtseize, so maybe they take the Chieftain here. Unless they have another discard spell, which would be a little bit rough. Wow, they take the Munitions Expert. I mean, maybe they just got a kill spell for the Chieftain. Okay, they are on Jund, that makes sense. So, even though we are leaking information here by playing the Blackcleave Cliffs, you know, shows them what we've drawn for the turn. We do run a decent number of tap lands. I don't think it's worth bluffing something. I'd rather get the Blackcleave Cliffs in play untapped here. Okay, so they have Jocelyn to Thoughtseize, so we lose the Chieftain as well. Oh, okay, nice. There we go. That's a really good top deck. So now we can go Fable, loot away some of these lands, and kind of back in the game now, unless the opponent has a Shieldred straight away. Or I guess, you know, if they have Molten Impact, that's also kind of rough, because then they have a good target for the Jarsel as well. Okay, they don't have a good target for the Jarsel, which is great. Attack in, definitely not going to block. We can get a treasure off the 2/2 unless they play a bigger creature here. I mean, I'm kind of surprised they attacked. You know, they're already down to 14, and I'm guessing they don't want to give us a treasure off the 2/2. Maybe they just have a Fatal Push or something. Yeah, they must have a bigger creature or a piece of removal here, otherwise that attack just doesn't make any sense, I don't think. Ha, okay, Kolaghan's Command, sure. So we'll discard a land here, obviously. And then, okay. So even though keeping down the Bugbear is a tap land, it doesn't really matter because we don't play any 4-drops anyway. We draw Crucias, which is pretty nice. And, you know, there is an argument to keeping Battlecry Goblin and pitching the Den, but I think I quite like having Den around against Rakdos specifically. And we can turn Battlecry Goblin. Okay, we got another Crucias here, which is really nice, because if they don't kill our first Crucias, we can just pitch this one to find a Muxus, and if they do kill the first Crucias, we have a backup one already. Not to mention that we're getting Reflection now as well, so had the opponent had Shieldred on 4, I think this game would be a lot more scary. I'm still kind of concerned about them having a 2-mana piece of interaction, because then they can immediately flash it back with Jarsel, and then get Kolaghan's Command the following turn. Okay, they attack again, which is surprising. I guess they feel like they need to, you know, take the advantage because Goblins generally has the better long game. Okay, they do have a Crucias of their own, sure. So we'll see what they pitch here. So, I mean, the concern here pitching the Crucias is that we do then make ourselves a little bit vulnerable to Thoughtseize. And there is an argument to maybe holding on to this land, but I do want to start applying pressure back here. So I'm going to attack with the Den. They probably block the 1/1 here. Oh, wow. Okay, they block the Den. So they could be sandbagging Thoughtseize, but I feel like if they had Thoughtseize, they probably would have used it last turn, because we could have hit like a Goblin Chieftain or something. So as long as they don't hit Thoughtseize here, I think we should be good. Because we already have the mana for Muxus, even though we lost the Den last turn. And yeah, like I said, I feel if they had Thoughtseize, they would have used it already. Okay, they now get to Perilous Iteration. I mean, that's a lot of looks for Thoughtseize. I'm really hoping they don't find it. So definitely going to let the damage through here. We could have traded with our Crucias, but I feel like we're either winning with Muxus here, or if they do have Thoughtseize, we need some way to recover anyway. Okay, so they didn't hit the Thoughtseize, which is great. So we get Muxus here, and I'm hoping this should be good enough to win, unless we get really unlucky. Okay, sick, yeah, perfect. So that's more than enough to win here. We can copy the Horde Master, although that does kind of open us up to removal a little bit, but if they have it, we're still going to win. Yeah, okay, sweet, nice, we got there. So sideboarding here, I mean, so against Rakdos midrange, if I suspect they're playing my build with Night of Soul's Betrayal, I'll always bring in Feed the Swarm, but since they're playing Jund, I'm not even sure they are, and I think the main deck is already, you know, really good against Rakdos. You know, you're playing an aggressive deck, but you also have so many 2-for-1s in the deck, right? You got Horde Master, you got Cacophony Scamp that can often kill their creatures, you got Fable, you got Muxus. So I think the main deck is already very well set up against the red-black base mid-range decks. Like I said, if I think they're playing the build with Night of Soul's Betrayal, I'll usually board in Feed the Swarm in place of a couple copies of Munitions Expert usually, but since they're on Jund, I don't know if they'll be playing Night of Soul's Betrayal, really, so we'll have to see. But yeah, from my experience, I don't think I've come across a single Jund mid-range deck that does. If we do see it, then I'll obviously bring it in going into Game 3, but for the most part, I imagine the Jund decks are running stuff like, you know, Minsk and Boo or Shieldred at the top end. So, not going to bring it in this particular matchup, but obviously things will change if we see it in this game. So here we don't have a 1-drop, but we're against the Thoughtseize deck, and we've got a reasonable hand, so I'm definitely not going to mulligan here. You know, you very rarely want to mulligan against these Thoughtseize mid-range decks. So we'll see what the opponent leads on here. Okay, Teachings of the Kirin, interesting. So we'll definitely use Munitions Expert here, because that then just makes their Chapter 2 do absolutely nothing. And then almost certainly going to be going for Fable next turn, and then we can hopefully start ramping into Muxus. So Chapter 2 does nothing because they have no creatures in play. Let's see what they've got on 3 here. Okay, they got Crucias, which is a little bit annoying. See what they discard, but yeah, almost certainly going to be slamming Fable, unless we draw our own Crucias here. Although they could potentially have Fatal Push, which we could get kind of blown out by. Either way, I think, you know, we didn't draw Crucias, so definitely going to go for Fable here. Hopefully they don't have Fatal Push, because then we can start ramping into Muxus. I mean, having said that, we did also draw the Prospector, which is also really nice at helping us ramp into the Muxus. So as long as we can fade Thoughtseize for one more turn, I think we can just cast Muxus next turn, right? We can go Prospector and just sack everything to play it pre-combat, or we could... I mean, that's probably the line. You could potentially make an argument for attacking first to get a treasure and then do it post-combat, so you get to keep one of the Prospectors, but... okay, so the Inquisition takes the Prospector here, I imagine. I mean, even if they do, though, as long as they don't have a kill spell for the 2/2, we can still ramp into it for next turn, potentially, as long as we draw a 5th land drop. Okay, they do have the push for the 2/2, makes sense. But 2 Battlecry Goblins is still really good here. Okay, so they attack with the Crucias. Let's see what else they've got. Okay, they just go to the end step. See what they pitch to Crucias here. It's kind of annoying. I don't get why they haven't fixed whether... You can't see if the opponents choose Ambitious or Expedient, which is actually pretty relevant in a lot of situations. So I think since we have the Muxus here, we just want as many lands as possible. And even though, again, we're giving the opponent perfect information of our hands here, I want to hold on to the Takenuma in case they Thoughtseize us here. Because then we can channel... You know, if we draw another land, we can just potentially channel the Takenuma to get back the Muxus here. Okay, so they push the Battlecry Goblin. I wanted to play both out here because then it just enables a really sick turn next turn. The alternative is just playing one and activating it, which I don't think is particularly good, right? We're not really going to get punished by committing to the board when the opponent has a Crucias and another creature in play, because they're not going to want to cast Brotherhood's End or something like that because it will kill their own creatures. So no reason to not commit to the board there. So that was a pretty good turn for the opponent, right? They managed to kill both of our creatures there. 2 for 1 dust off the Molten Impact. And now we're basically just reliant on this Muxus to get us there. And we're kind of in a rough spot here where if we don't draw another land, we're forced to play the Takenuma, which then leaves us pretty soft to Thoughtseize, but that's just how we'll have to play it, I think. Just hope they don't draw Thoughtseize. The other issue as well is if we do draw like a non-land and we play a land and a non-land card, we're then pretty vulnerable to both Croxa and Kolaghan's Command, discarding the Muxus. So I think there is an argument to not playing the Scamp out here, but I also think that doing nothing with our mana here is also pretty risky. I mean, maybe there is definitely an argument here, but the other thing is if we don't play the Cacophony Scamp out here and they kill the Reflection, they're applying a lot of pressure. Oh, they do have the Kolaghan's Command, so we did get kind of punished, but I also feel like if we just pass here... Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, you know, we're biased by the fact they did happen to have the Kolaghan's Command there, but again, if I'd held onto the Cacophony Scamp, I would just have nothing in play. They would get a free attack in with the Orochi, but I guess then, you know... Oh, they have Molten Impact as well. I mean, like... Yeah, I think it's close. Maybe on balance, it was better to hold onto the Scamp there to play around Kolaghan's Command, but I feel like in that spot, we're probably not beating Kolaghan's Command anyway, right? Well, I don't know. Maybe we can afford to just take an extra hit from the Orochi, whatever it's called. So even if we had held on to the Scamp, we wouldn't have been able to cast Muxus this turn anyway. So we would have been an extra point of damage down, and they would have had an extra 1/1 as well. Okay, another Molten Impact. I mean, if we draw a land here, then... Yeah, okay, so I think we did get punished pretty hard for playing the Scamp out there. Yeah, I think I just played too fast. I should have realised that we can let them hit us a few times, right? We're not going to fall too far behind on the board by holding on to the Scamp there. And it probably was because it's not only Kurligan's Command, but it's also Croc, so we were playing around. So we're not completely dead here, right? We can flash in the Munitions Expert to kill the 1/1 and chump block the Crucias here, but yeah, I think we did lose this one by a misplay. Oh, they got Minsc be okay, sound. So we definitely lose this one, but yeah, I think on balance I shouldn't have played the Cacophony Scamp out there. That was probably a mistake. I mean, my thought was I kind of hope they don't have it, and holding on to the Scamp means that we're more likely just dead to them applying pressure on board. But yeah, I think on balance I probably should have held on to it there. On the play should be a lot easier now though, because the really nice thing about this particular build is just we're much more aggressively slanted, so we can close games out a lot quicker. So let's see what the opponent has here. I mean, either way, we've got a pretty sick curve out, right? Prospector into Battlecry Goblin into Chieftain is nice. Having the one of Muxus in our hand is a bit of a liability, though, because now we're, this is the kind of situation I'm talking about where I think versions that run for Muxus in current Historic, where everything is so fast, is just really clunky, right? We do have the Prospector, but we don't really have good way to cast this Muxus yet. And it's now super vulnerable to Thoughtseize. I mean, the main reason why we're worried about Thoughtseize is because we do only have one copy of Muxus, but I think, this kind of situation, particularly, yeah, if they have a removal spell for Prospector, now we're so far away from casting Muxus, so this kind of hopefully highlights why I'm not a huge fan of running for Muxus when you don't have to. Crucius being able to tutor it means you don't have to run it to have consistent access to it anymore, if that makes sense. Okay, Teachings of the Kirin again. Really not worried about that one. Okay, another land isn't bad. I mean, at least we're reasonably close to Muxus here. Either way, we can run out the Battlecry Goblin. Going to pump things beforehand so that we get a token. And now we start, we start applying a lot of pressure here. And the opponent also kind of needs to find Thoughtseize or Kurligan's Command in the next few turns. Kurligan's Command would be kind of brutal here because if they wait for us to empty our hands, they can kill the Chieftain and potentially make us discard Muxus in the same turn. But we'll see how things plan out here. I mean, if the opponent doesn't find a Fatal Push, or if the opponent doesn't have a Fatal Push here, I think we're just applying so much pressure, even without the Muxus, that they might lose. Okay, so we can play the Black Cleave Cliffs tap. Now we have enough mana for the Muxus. And now they're in trouble. They probably have to block here. Well, they definitely have to block here or they're dead. I've just got to hope they don't have a Fatal Push. Because we can activate the Battlecry Goblin twice here, which is going to put through a ton of damage. So, unless they have Fatal Push and they're sandbagging it, we should just be good to win here. Sweet, we got there. Nice. Okay, so we're on the play here. And yeah, this hand looks really nice, especially on the play, right? We can go Scamp on one, or, you could go Fusing as well, but I think Scamp is generally best on one because if the opponent also plays an important one drop, you can just use the Scamp to kill it straight away. And then if we do that, we can play Hordemaster on turn 2, which then allows us to kill 2 toughness creatures, and the Scamp sacrificing itself triggers the Hordemaster as well. So going to slam Hordemaster on 2 here and just attack. So turn Timber Symbiosis either means Mono Green Devotion or Belcher, both of which I think should be good. If we are against Devotion, they don't have a turn 1 mana dork. Okay, they got Paradise Druid, sure. So I think here we just want to race, right? The big weakness of Mono Green Devotion is they don't have great interaction in the early game, so as long as we can apply as much pressure as possible, this should be huge. Obviously, we can't use the Scamp to kill the Paradise Druid because it's got hexproof, but they're already down to 13 and we have a ton of pressure in play already. Not to mention that we can kill anything that has 3 toughness off the Cacophony Scamp here. Okay, I mean, I think we're just attacking here, right? Like I said, we just need to race. They can obviously eat one of our creatures with the Old Growth Troll here, but I'm not really too concerned about that. You know, we're getting in for a ton of pressure. They might be forced to block with the Llanowar Elves. We can use the Cacophony Scamp to kill the Paradise Druid here as well, which should cut them off from a lot of mana. Okay, so they block the Scamp. That kind of makes sense because that denies us the Proliferate. And then we're definitely interested in killing the Paradise Druid here. We actively kind of don't want to kill the Old Growth Troll because that will give them access to mana, right? The most important thing here at this point in the game is to just cut them off mana so they can't have a crazy explosive turn. And killing the Old Growth Troll can actually be an issue because it gives, you know, they can equip it to a land which gives them access to mana. Okay, they've got Nykthos, but thankfully we've killed all their dorks. Yeah, okay, they just scoop it up. So managing to deny them mana there was pretty huge. And we just had a really fast start. So we definitely want Fatal Pushes here, particularly on the draw to just kill their Llanowar Elves. And then I think on the draw we can cut Munitions Expert because it's not that important, right? If we're on the play, I think Munitions Expert is a lot better because we can play it on turn 2 to kill their turn 1 Llanowar Elves. So I think on the when we're on the play, if it does go to a game 3, I'll probably bring those 2 Munitions Experts back in place of another couple of creatures, probably the Fuselings. But as things stand, you know, 4 Fatal Push to kill their turn 1 elf and just racing is the game plan in this matchup because, like I said, they don't really have good early interaction. So as long as you can apply pressure before they have their crazy explosive combo turns, you can usually just finish the game off afterwards. And this is why I really like cards like Cacophony Scamp and Fusing because even if the opponent does somewhat stabilize against you, you can often force through the last points of damage with it. So this is kind of a sketchy hand. I mean, because we don't have turn 1 interaction anyway, like, I would usually in this matchup say you either need turn 1 Fatal Push or you need a very fast clock. And this hand is a pretty fast clock, right? We can go Fuseling into Hordemaster or Fuseling into Double Prospector, into Chieftain, into Hordemaster, which is pretty sick. So going to lead on attacking with the Fusing. I think I'm going to go for the Prospectors just because that will result in the most damage output for next turn. So we'll go for Double Prospector here and see what they do. You know, if they have an Old Growth Troll, that could be a little bit annoying as a roadblock, but we have, you know, we can either play the Chieftain or the Hordemaster here just to put a ton of extra power into play. Okay, they just play Llanowar Elves, so that's obviously very good for us. Going to run out the Chieftain here just to be more mana efficient, and since they don't have an Old Growth Troll, you know, they probably don't have great blocks anyway. They could block the Chieftain with the Paradise Druid, but I'm fine with that. That would buff the Fuseling, and then, you know, we can just play the Hordemaster to buff our board again next turn. And like I said, we just want to race here. We just want to get in for as much damage as possible so that even if they do stabilize with the Cavalier of Thorns, we can often just go wide, go around it, and just close the game out. Wow, no blocks at all. So I imagine they have to have Storm the Festival here. Oh, do they even have enough mana? Oh yeah, they do. They have exactly enough mana for Storm the Festival. So I imagine that's what they have. Otherwise, I assume they probably would have blocked the Paradise Druid there just to deny us more mana. Okay, Cura, sure. Can they still cast Storm the Festival? I think that's just too slow, right? We're definitely ignoring the Cura here. I guess they're hoping that maybe we just attack the Cura instead, but even though Cura does do a lot for their deck, as an aggro deck, you know, the big weakness of Mono Green Devotion is they don't have great defense in the early game outside of their Old Growth Troll and Cavalier of Thorns, so you almost always want to ignore it unless they're already at a high life total. Right, if they weren't down at 11, there's maybe an argument to trying to kill Cura here, but we just go face. You've got to ignore it. Because, you know, Cura soaks up 7 potential damage if you kill it, which is a lot. Okay, they block. I mean, I think that's good enough. Yeah, sweet. Opponent just scoops it up. Nice. Oh, okay, interesting. So I think I've faced this person quite a few times, and they're usually on green-red mid-range, but I'm not going to make any massive assumptions. I mean, either way, this hand is great. I mean, obviously the big weakness is we don't have black mana for Crucias, but having Scamp on turn 1 on the play when I suspect the opponent might be on a Llanowar Elves deck is really sick. I mean, we'll have to see. I don't want to make any assumptions because people change decks. You know, I change decks all the time. Okay, Strangle. So that I think that could mean they're on the same deck potentially. I mean, either way, we can run out Battlecry Goblin here and kind of hope they don't have another piece of interaction, because if we can get 2 Battlecry Goblins going, that's a lot of pressure. Okay, it does look like they're on the same deck, which is good to know. So we didn't draw a black land for the Crucias, unfortunately, but drawing another 1-drop is really nice. It enables us to curve out nicely here, and then even if we don't draw a black land, we have a ton of pressure in play next turn, right? We can potentially activate the Battlecry Goblins twice, produce 2 tokens off the attack. Okay, they go for Khan, and they minus, what, they get Sky Sovereign here, maybe? Yeah, okay, go for Sky Sovereign. I mean, either way, I think that might just be too slow, right? We definitely want to pump before combat to get both the Battlecry triggers, and we definitely want to kill the Khan. I'm just trying to figure out if we have lethal. I think we're just short of going lethal if we go all face here. So I think we do want to go attack Khan with at least one of these. Just double checking. Yeah, I think we're just short of lethal if we go everything face. So we definitely want to take out the Khan here. So we'll go attack the Khan with the Fuseling and go face with everything else and just activate the Battlecry Goblin again here. So get to kill the Khan and put them all the way down to 5. So yeah, we would have been too short of lethal if we'd just gone face. Okay, opponent just scoops it up. I mean, us having Cacophony Scamp on turn 1 was really nice there as just a way to prevent them from playing an elf on turn 1, right? Force them to play a removal spell instead. So here on the draw, I definitely think we want Fatal Pushes to kill their Llanowar Elves. If it goes to a game 3, I could potentially see an argument to just keeping a couple of Fatal Pushes in, because we only really want them for the turn 1 Llanowar Elves, really. So if it goes to game 3 and we're on the play, well, we obviously will be on the play if that does happen, but I'll probably cut 2 pushes and keep 2 Fusings in just to have more of an aggressive start. Okay, no elf on turn 1 is great to see. Very happy about that. Either way, I'm going to run out the Scamp on 1 here, just in case they draw an elf off the top or something. And now we've got decent options for next turn. We've got Expert, we've got Fuseling, and then we've got a Chieftain for the following turn as well. Wow, Chalice on 1, okay. I mean, that stops us from playing the Fuseling, but thankfully we've already got the Scamp in play, and thankfully we've also got, everything else in our hand isn't 1 mana. I mean, that's pretty interesting, right? We can use the Scamp to put the Chalice counters up to 2, but I actually think that's not great. I mean, Fable is great to see here because we can kill the Expert, but if we are in a spot where we absolutely have to cast the 1-drops, we can use the Scamp to proliferate here, I think. So this could be a mistake if the opponent has Brotherhood's End, but I feel like we don't have better options here. If they have the Brotherhood's End, then so be it. But if they, and we still have the Den of the Bugbear in play. Plus, yeah, I don't know. I don't think we can afford to play around Brotherhood's End at this point. We just have to get aggressive because if they don't have it, we're putting so much pressure on them anyway. Okay, so they got Chandra. I assume they kill the Chieftain here. Yeah, okay. So that does take our clock down a little bit, but it's not too bad. I definitely want to save this Munitions Expert to kill the Reflection here. So we'll attack the Chandra with the Munitions Expert and go face with the Cacophony Scamp. Again, we could use the Scamp to proliferate their Chalice of the Void, but I think that's a mistake, right? We've already got our 1-drop in play. We don't have another one, and we actively want to cast this 2-drop here. So I think I'm going to wait until their end step or until they use a piece of removal to flash in the Munitions Expert here. Yeah, we'll see what else they've got. Okay, Minsk and Boo. Okay, so I think we probably have to kill the 1-1 instead here. And then that enables us to kill the Minsk and Boo with Den of the Bugbear next turn. So we kill the 1-1. So that is a bit annoying. We have to have the opponent keep their Reflection around, but killing Minsk and Boo here is super important. That card is so powerful if you let it live. So I think we have to attack Minsk and Boo with everything here, including the token of Den of the Bugbear, because if they block the Den with the Reflection, they get to keep the Minsk and Boo around. So killing the Minsk and Boo is the priority here, and then we can still attack them with the Den next turn. Okay, they got another Chandra, so interesting to see whether they minus here or not. If they do, then we can kill the Chandra. Okay, they do minus, which is a very good sign. If they'd used the mana or something, that would have been a lot more scary. But now, oh wow, okay, that's a good draw. So is that enough for lethal? That's... Oh, okay, opponent just scoops up. Sweet, we got that. Nice. Okay, so going second here. And I can't keep a 1-lander, unfortunately. This looks pretty good, though. Tough to know what to put back here, because I really want Prospector into Munitions Expert to be able to kill stuff. I think I'm going to put back the Chieftain here, just because Battlecry Goblin is generally better at applying pressure, which is kind of crazy to say. Okay, opponents want to tap Blood Crypt, so that could be a number of things. Either way, definitely going to lead on the Prospector here. If they play something we want to be able to kill, we'll just go for Expert on turn 2. Okay, Blood-Tithe Harvester, so I imagine we're against Rakdos Midrange here, which has felt like a really good matchup so far. I mean, unfortunately, drawing Den of the Bugbear is a little bit rough here because that's 2 tap lands, but we definitely want to take out the Harvester here. Otherwise, that's that's essentially a free removal spell for the opponent whenever they want it, because all of our creatures are pretty small. But, if we don't draw anything great, we can go Battlecry Goblin plus Den next turn, which isn't the worst. And then if they don't have a removal spell for the Battlecry Goblin, we can start using it to apply a bunch of pressure. Okay, interesting. So I think I'm going to go for the Horde Master here instead. And then this isn't bad. We can find spots along this curve to play Den here, because next turn we can go Battlecry Goblin and activate at the same turn, because we have an untapped mountain here, which is nice. So opponent chooses not to block here, which is a bit of a concern. Probably means that they've got removal or something that they want to ramp into here. Or potentially they just need the treasure token to unlock their hand a little bit more. Okay, so they attack with the 2/2. Definitely going to let that through, obviously. And then hopefully they don't have anything too crazy here. Let's see what they've got. I mean, thankfully they don't have... Well, they're very unlikely to have Brotherhoods in game 1. So if we go wide, I think they're going to struggle to deal with that. And Molten Impact doesn't really do the job either because we have Prospector in play. We can just sack whatever they target in response. So here, I think we're just going to attack with everything. We don't mind losing the Horde Master here if it means getting in for a bunch of extra damage. Plus, we could potentially flip a card off the top off the Horde Master. Okay, opponent blocks the Battlecry Goblin instead, which makes sense, but I think opponent is getting punished here a little bit for playing the 2/2. Sorry, for not blocking and then attacking with the 2/2. Although having said that, they do have treasures, so maybe that might be relevant. We'll have to see. But yeah, either way, I feel we're in a pretty good spot here, I think. Oh, wow, they pitch a Traxxer. Okay, I was not expecting that. So opponent could be on Reanimator then, which would be a bit annoying. I mean, thankfully, against specifically a Traxxer, we have Prospector, so we can sack whatever they block with it. Okay, there's Cruelty of Gix. And they haven't played a land for turn yet, so they can potentially find a land off the Atraxa and use Fatal Push, which would be pretty rough. Wow, they found land and Fatal Push, and now they can push the Prospector, which then basically just prevents us from attacking, which is really rough, because if they don't kill the Prospector, we can just sack whatever they block with the Atraxa, but... Oh, they pushed the Horde Master, okay. So that's not the worst. That gives us some outs here, I think. Okay, we whiff off the Horde Master trigger, which is a little bit rough. And we do draw an untapped land, so that does potentially allow us to fire up Den, but they have 2 other blockers, so I just don't think Den is good enough, right? Because they block the Den with the track, so we sack it. They block 2 of our other creatures with their 2 creatures. We just don't have enough. So yeah, maybe them killing the Horde Master was right there, actually. Although, had we drawn another Battlecry Goblin or something, that could have done it, so... Yeah, it's interesting spot there, whether it was better for the opponent to kill Horde Master or kill Prospector. I feel like it's safer for them to kill the Prospector, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, I think we're in a really rough spot now. We kind of need Muxus to get back into this one, I think. I think we have to let this through. Now the life total race is going to be completely flipped on its head. Right, they go back up to 12. We're down at 9 now. So yeah, again, I think it's kind of like Muxus or bust now. And they got Pyromancer, so if they discard 2 non-lands, that's another 2 blockers to clog up the ground as well. So, okay, they're running Assemble from parts as well, so good to know. I mean, to be fair, Reanimator is a deck that should be winning game 1s. So it's not the end of the world. Yeah, we're just going to scoop it up here, unfortunately. But yeah, not the end of the world to lose game 1 against Reanimator. Now, it's a little bit scary that I've only got 2 pieces of Graveyard Hate in this sideboard. These sorts of matchups are often the reason why I love bringing, or if I can find room in the sideboard, I like bringing 3 bits of Graveyard Hate to maximize our chances of drawing it. And I'm not sure what to cut here, honestly. I definitely want the 2 hearses here for sure. And I'm just trying to think, normally I cut Munitions Expert. I don't know, I feel like we want to keep aggressive, right? We need to go underneath the opponent because them finding room in their deck for the reanimation package probably means they don't have as much generic good stuff you'd expect from a Rakdos mid-range deck. So I think it's important to keep as many 1-drops in to get aggressive, but I also feel like Munitions Expert is important here to kill their early creatures to make room, and also kill, we can potentially use it to kill an Atraxa later in the game if we have a wide board as well. So this is a little bit of an awkward hand, right? We don't have our third land yet, and oh wow, Muxus is not the card we want to draw, but we do get to get Hearse into play here. This hand was basically kept off the back of Hearse. I really hope we hit our third land on curve. I mean, this is another exact example why I really like running 25 lands. Oh, okay. We did draw a land, which is better than not, but we can't play Crucias on curve, which is a bit annoying. So yeah, this is kind of the exact example why I really think it's right to run 25 lands in Goblins, because it's a deck that often just loses on the spot if you don't have your third land. So unfortunately, they have a Braid for Hearse, so that is pretty frustrating. Hopefully, I don't have a really good play on turn 3 here. Want to avoid Crucias. Fable is also not that great. I mean, I wouldn't mind them playing Fable. Okay, yeah. So they do have the Fable. That's not the end of the world. So this isn't actually that bad a spot now, because now we can get Crucias in play, and that can start ramping to Muxus. We can pitch Crucias and pick... Obviously, we have to pick Expedient here because we already have the Muxus in hand, but that's actually not too bad because that could have found us a land. If we can find an untapped land, we can go for Muxus next turn, which would be pretty huge. So I've set a stop during their turn now because I want to bluff having Fatal Push. If we just pass priority straight away, they just know for sure that we don't have it. So I want to bluff it here just to, make them think about it, make them play around it a little bit more potentially. Okay, they push the Horde Master, which is interesting. Hopefully we don't hit a land. Okay, that's a Hearse. So, and Liliana. So we really, really want to hit an untapped land off the top here. This is another... Well, I guess we only have one Muxus, so this isn't going to come up that often, but... This is kind of another example where I'm happy that I'm running a slightly higher land count because we're more likely to find an untapped land. Now, having said that, playing 4 fast lands and 4 dens, perfect. I was going to say, playing a lot of lands that enter tap later in the game can make things a little bit awkward, but we're only running 1 Muxus, so that shouldn't come up as often. Okay, sick. I mean, that's pretty good, right? Especially with a Chieftain in hand. Unless they have a Brotherhood's End, in which case we still get to keep the Muxus. I think we should be good. Yeah, okay, sweet, nice. So Crucia's putting in work there, right? Could have found us the Muxus if we didn't have it, but... helped us to ramp into it when we did, which is nice. So, I mean, maybe I should have done this the other way around last game, but how things planned out there, I think we just want to get as aggressive as possible, right? We need to go underneath them. Like I said, it looks like they're playing basically Rakdos midrange, but have slotted in a reanimation package, which means that they'll either have less removal or less other threats. So I feel like just going underneath them is the way to win this. Expert is going to be nice at killing 2/2 tokens off Fable. And I don't know, I feel like Munitions Expert killing a Atraxa isn't going to come up as often. I just want to get as aggressive as possible, basically. So this hand's nice, right? We've got 2 1-drops. We've got Battlecry Goblin, which can apply a lot of pressure. And Crucias can potentially dig us towards a Muxus as well, which, as we saw last game, can just completely dominate as well. Oh, okay, Hearse off the top is nice. So we're going to lead on Scamp here. Just in case they play Harvester and we draw a Horde Master or something, we can use it to take out their creature on turn 2, which would be pretty nice. Interesting decision point whether we want to play Battlecry Goblin or Hearse here. We'll attack with the Scamp first just to see what happens. I feel like... I'm going to get Hearse into play here just because... I mean, maybe that's wrong, actually. Maybe we're supposed to apply pressure, but I feel like running Battlecry Goblin out makes us vulnerable to Brotherhood's End where Hearse doesn't. But again, I feel like we... Well, the other thing is that I really want to play Crucias on turn 3, and I feel like we have to get Hearse in play before the opponent's turn 4, because otherwise they could have gone, for example, Crucias, pitch Atraxa, and then go for Assemble from parts. So even though I've, been repeatedly saying that we need to apply pressure in this matchup, since I wanted to play Crucias on 3, I felt like getting Hearse out on turn 2 was important there, so that we can play Crucias on curve and still have Graveyard Hate up for turn 4, which is when they could start reanimating Atraxa. I mean, again, maybe it's better to get Battlecry Goblin in and we could wait, because for them to do that, they would need exactly Fable or Crucias on 3 into exactly Assemble from Parts on 4. Although I guess if they're ramping off Crucias, they could have ramped into Cruelty of Gix as well, so not 100% sure on that one. We'll have to... I might go back and rewatch it and see what I think is the better line. Extinction Event. I guess they've got that in the sideboard for Mono Green Devotion. It's also reasonable against us in some situations as well, I guess. So we definitely want to get the Battlecry Goblins in play here. I don't mind committing extra to the board because I think the opponent's unlikely to want to play what am I saying? They're unlikely to want to play Brotherhood's End when they have Crucias and a 2/2 token in play. Now, we could have played both Battlecry Goblins there, but I feel like since we can get a counter on the Fuseling and get a Battlecry counter as well, that it's better to just attack now. And then next turn we can go for the second Battlecry Goblin and activate it again, which applies a lot of pressure. Now, again, we could have waited. We could have played both Battlecry Goblins, but I feel, we're missing out on a counter from attacking there. So, and I feel like that's slightly less mana efficient as well. So opponents thinking about their looting here. I mean, I'm pretty confident about this spot, right? We've got their graveyard on lock with Hearse. Okay, there's an Attractor as well. So very happy that we've got the graveyard hate in play here. Wow, they attack with Crucias, so I assume they have a Brotherhood's End here, if I had to guess. Or that attack makes no sense. Yeah, okay, so they do have the Brotherhood's Ends. Look, that is a little bit annoying. I mean, we can consider crewing up the Hearse. I mean, we'll definitely exile the Atraxa here. They do... Oh, that's a treasure token, not a blood token, so we don't have to worry about them looting stuff into the graveyard straight away here. I mean, I think I'm just going to activate the Battlecry Goblin this turn. And then we'll have to see what we draw. I would really like to draw another creature that can crew Hearse next turn. Because then we can potentially crew the Hearse, attack with both the Battlecry Goblin and the Hearse, and get the Battlecry trigger as well. Get the extra token. Okay, so opponent goes Cruelty Gix Chapter 1, which is pretty good for us, I think, because they lose 3 life off Chapter 2. I'm going to exile stuff from my graveyard because I am definitely considering crewing it up. So we just want it to have as much power as possible here. Oh, perfect. That is great. So not only now do we have a creature to crew the Hearse, but we also have something to pitch this land here. So I think the best line here is Crucias, crew Hearse, attack. We get a token off the Battlecry Goblin and then we can pump. Now, this does mean that the opponent now has a window to get Atraxa into the graveyard, but I feel like we should be winning before they get a chance to reanimate it here anyway, right? Because they have to block the Hearse here. We activate the Battlecry Goblin, puts them down to 4. They go down to 1 off the Cruelty of Gix trigger here. And so... Oh, wow. And we draw a Muxus off the Crucias. So, yeah, I feel like they probably have to get Brotherhood's End off the Tutor trigger here. And, I mean, we have the Muxus here anyway now, so that was obviously a great draw. So, yeah, they probably get Brotherhood's End. If we didn't have the Muxus, I guess, they Brotherhood's End. We could potentially, if we didn't have Muxus, we just drew another creature. We could just crew the Hearse and attack for lethal, potentially. That could be kind of risky if they had Fatal Push, though, right? Because if we had drawn like a Battlecry Goblin or like just another creature, we can crew the Hearse and then they Fatal Push it and then get back Atraxa. So that could be a bit risky, but as things stand, we found the Muxus, which is obviously great. Okay, that's, pretty mid-hit, but we still win the game off it. Okay, sick. We got that. Nice.